Well, Dana, probiotics, good bacteria are in many places. They're on our skin, they're in the various cavities of our bodies, but in particular, the gastrointestinal tract has 100 trillion microorganisms in it, and it's a combination of good and bad bugs, and what we want is the preponderance to be for good bugs.
Sure.
And that's what probiotics try to be for people, is the infusion of good bugs into the body.
Mm-hmm. So how much are the bugs in there? I mean, is it like 10 football fields, or is there any way we can measure this so, you know, the public would understand, like, really what is a trillion of these bugs?
Well, I mean, first of all, when we think of our own cell, our own body, our body's made up of cells.
Right.
And if you were to enumerate all the cells in the human body, it's about 10 trillion.
Okay.
So we have in our gastrointestinal tract 100 trillion. There's 10 times more of these microorganisms in our gut than is in our bodies. Now, what's important to understand is not all of the microorganisms in our gut are necessarily positive.
Right.
Because also in a lifetime we take in 60 billion tons of food.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what's in the food, end up in our gut and grow in our gut, and it might not be good.
So what are the good bugs, what are the bad bugs, and why do we need to take probiotics?
Well, one of the reasons we need to take probiotics is because to kill the bad bugs over the last 100 years we've got into using antibiotics.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And antibiotics do a job of killing bad bugs, but unfortunately many of the antibiotics also kill the good bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And this has created a whole increase in things like irritable bowel syndrome and various inflammatory bowel diseases.
Right.
And so because we've lost the good bugs, for example, with the overuse of antibiotics, then we need to bring in good bugs. And that's what probiotics are. The industry around probiotics that we have actually been involved in for 30 years is to replace the good bugs.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit about, let's say, your product and why, say, your product is very good or better than other products on the market, and then also talk about other products on the market. You hear so much these days in the supermarket. They have Activa, then, you know, there's BioK Plus. Some of my patients use this one and that one, and yeah. So.
Sure. In fact, mentioning the sort of the industry regarding probiotics, it's a booming industry right now.
It's huge.
Everybody's talking about probiotics these days. And in part it comes because the whole research in the gastrointestinal tract and the whole issue of bugs, both good and bad, is reaching some very high circles in the establishment. The Human Genome Project, which was completed in 2003, was a big deal when we typed the whole human genome, and that was done by NIH in collaboration with research institutions all over the world. After they completed that, they decided to then enumerate what's going on in the gastrointestinal tract, and they in fact admitted that what's going on in the gastrointestinal tract is absolutely important to our health. And so they're now trying to identify all the different kinds of bugs that actually exist in the gastrointestinal tract. Now, that's mainstream medicine we're talking about.
MD medicine?
MD medicine. This is the highest circles of MD medicine, allopathic medicine. NIH is putting billions of dollars into understanding what the organisms are.
Can you explain to people what the NIH is? What does that stand for?
NIH is the National Institute of Health, and it's the America's leading think tank of where all the money's poured for medical research.
A lot of money goes in there.
A lot of money, and so what they're doing now is putting that money into understanding what's going on with all this microorganismal life that's going on in the gastrointestinal tract. And so now that's mainstream medical thought. Now, of course, we've been on the holistic side of medicine, and we've been talking about probiotics for 30 years.
Right.
So it's been already in the field. In fact, if you talk about probiotics, you must probably go back to Metchnikoff, back around the time of Louis Pasteur, and over 100 years ago, and he in Western thinking is thought of to be the father of probiotics, and he was actually a Russian zoologist who took over the Pasteur Institute after Louis Pasteur died, and he was very old at that age and at that time, and he became concerned about his longevity. And so he, as Weston Price did, took a trip all around the world studying different cultures to see who had longevity.
Kimchi.
Kimchi?
Right? Is kimchi one of the foods that he saw people were
Oh, well,
eating?
yes, yes, that's exactly right. And what he noticed is the cultures that ate fermented foods had longevity. And then he kept studying what society had the most people over 100 years of age. And he, at that point, 100 and some years ago, he came down on the side of the Bulgarian people. And when he looked at the Bulgarian people, how they ate a lot of fermented dairy, and yogurts and cheeses and kefirs. And I don't know if you've ever had a true Bulgarian yogurt, but it's very, very sour because they use Lactobacillus bulgaricus. In fact, he identified that bacteria and named it.
Can we back up just a second?
Please.
Because the one that I've heard of, well, there's a number of different ones, but the big buzzword is Lactobacillus acidophilus, or bifidus.
Yes.
So can you tell us what the bulgaricus is compared to those others, why it would be better, or why people might live longer if they ate that one?
Right. So first of all, when we talk about bacteria in the gut, there's two major classes of organisms that are in the gut. They're above the genus level, which is when we talk about Lactobacillus. We're talking at the phylum level. There's Bacteroides and there's Firmicutes. These are two major groupings of bacteria. 51% of bacteria in the gut are in the family of Firmicutes, and the rest are Bacteroides, and another 1% is about 6 other phylum. And then when you go down to more refined looking at the organisms, the Lactobacillus and the Bifido genus are in the Firmicutes, along with Clostridia and other kinds of organisms, and E. coli. So when you look at the Lactobacillus genus, there's over 80 different species. So you mentioned Acidophilus, there's Rhamnosus, there's Helveticus, there's Salaveris, there's Casei, there's there's many, well, there's 80 different kinds. So it's a big question: which is the best?
Exactly.
Why use
That's
this
what everybody
one?
wants to know.
Yeah, why use that one?
As a physician, I want to know what's the best for my patients.
Exactly.
So, can you tell us?
As a producer of the product, that's what we want to know. And people who are spending billions of dollars at NIH, that's what they want to know. But the truth of the matter is that we haven't had the skills, technology, to be able to really go into the gut and see all the interactions that are going on in there. It's alive, and what are bacteria in essence producing in the gut? Well, what they're producing is what their genes allow them to produce, and what a gene produces is a protein. And what's a protein? A protein's an enzyme, or it's a communication molecule, or proteins are used in pathways, or proteins are used as receptor molecules, or proteins are used as communication molecules, or structural molecules, or hormones. Proteins have enormous diversity and are critical to our health. And bacteria, those 100 trillion bacteria in your gut, are all producing proteins.
It's a powerhouse.
It's a powerhouse of proteins. Now, our cells are producing proteins. So there's this mix down there of proteins, and there's only one cell layer difference between